What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me. But today we're going to create this really cool 3D effect with this hot air balloon design. Now as always, there's links to everything you're going to need in the description down below, the palette, and that's it really, the canvas size as well. Now if you didn't already know, I post weekly tutorials here on my YouTube channel, but I also post 3 more exclusive tutorials every single month over on my Patreon to Patreon supporters. I'll leave a link in the description down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and with all that said, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to want to go ahead and do on our canvas is change our background. So we're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here in the second column. So the second color, and just drag that onto the screen. And then we'll leave the background as it is for now until we've added in the rest of the content before we add some more color back there. So what we're then going to go ahead and do is start to add in our clouds down here, which will nicely frame everything else. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the third color on the top row there, which is white, of course. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our brush library, we're going to go to calligraphy, and we're going to grab the monoline brush. Now what I want you to do on the monoline, I don't want you to ruin your monoline settings, so we're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and on the duplicated version just tap on it. We're then going to go ahead and go to the option of properties, and we're going to change our brush behavior and maximum size all the way up so we can make it really big. So if we make this up to say something around about, let's go to 600 for example, and that will make your monoline much bigger. And then what we're going to do is go up to our stroke path, and we're just going to increase the spacing all the way up. That means that they'll be very separated from one another, so we'll just maximize the spacing under stroke path and then hit done when you're done. Now you have a really big dot that you can use on the screen, and we can make our size fairly large. If we make it to even just up to say about 30% and we tap on the screen, you get a nice big dot, and this will allow us to create our clouds at the bottom down here. So we're going to go to our layers and we're going to create a new layer. This is going to be the first lot of clouds and is going to sit at the very bottom corners of our design. I'm going to make my brush size a little bit bigger to start with. I'm going to go up to about sort of 38% or around that mark. That looks pretty big. And what I'm going to do is just tap down here, and I'll tap just slightly higher on the left to get started. And then I'm just going to sort of fluctuate my brush between 40 and around about sort of 30, if not slightly smaller, and just create a nice sort of bumpy, lumpy cloud effect down into the middle down here. So all your clouds can be nice and different sizes. I'm going to go even smaller this time. I'll go down to about 20 and make a dot. Maybe I'll even go ahead and make another one up here. And I'll make one up there as well. We want to try and avoid having sort of sharp, sort of really sort of dead end areas. Let's go ahead and make our brush size a bit bigger again, maybe to 25%, fill this gap in, but maybe just let it dip in there. And maybe I can even just sort of round that off on the right there, and I can just tap away. Because we've got the spacing nice and big, you will just need to tap a few times to fill that in. And then on the left here, we'll do exactly the same. So I'm going to sort of put one dot here, and then maybe another one just here, just to fill that gap a little bit. Let's make the brush size maybe a bit smaller again, maybe around about 18%. We'll tap here, or maybe make this one bounce out a little bit, and then maybe fill that gap again. And then what you can go ahead and do is just tap away, filling that in, maybe make your brush size even bigger just to speed that process up. And you should end up with some nice bumpy, fluffy clouds here at the bottom of your design. And then what we're going to do is go to our layers, we'll create a new layer, and we'll drag it underneath the white one. And then we'll go to our colors, we'll go to the fourth color, and we'll repeat the steps again, but we're going to go a little bit higher this time, and we'll make sure they link in the middle. I'm going to start off by just connecting them in the middle a little bit like so. And then we're going to go ahead and maybe put one just beside it, maybe one up here as well, and then maybe one that just sort of links right off at the top. And then I'll do a couple in here, and I'll basically fill in the gap. So my brush size is about 37% for now. I'm specifically not sort of mentioning the brush size, it's about 40 on this occasion, but because you can create your own sort of scape how you want to. So just sort of have some fun creating your own sort of scape, as long as yours sort of matches the same in terms of the main things that we need to be making sure that are correct, such as they join in the middle here, and we go obviously edge to edge. So we should just create a little bump there maybe, and maybe one just at the top. Something simple like this, and let's maybe make an even smaller one and just create a little bubble at the top there on its own, just to sort of balance that out a little bit more. Once you've done that, you can then go to your layers and create another new layer and drag it underneath that one. And we'll repeat this one more time. So we'll go to our colors. We'll grab the fifth color on the top row. Go back to your brush, maybe make it around about sort of 40 5-ish%. And again, we'll do the same thing. We'll make a connecting blob in the middle and then just sort of create some blobs around that. And I'm going to see what I can do with the same brush size, for example. So maybe a few things like this. Blobbing them up and down like so. And then once you've done that, maybe going with some smaller ones, maybe 17% there. Add in some blobs up here, some slightly smaller ones. Create a little blob in there just to get rid of that harsh joining. And then maybe another one there too. And that looks pretty balanced. The only thing I want to do is just make sure the top is completely. So I'm just going to sort of join them up a little bit better. And then I think I can get away with a slightly bigger blob just there. And that looks quite nice and balanced to me. I like the look of that. And we've got a nice space in the middle. So you can see there we're dipping it in the middle to make shape and space for our little hot air balloon that's going to go there. Next, what we're going to go ahead and do is add in the shadows while we're on the clouds layers. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go to the white clouds at the top, and we're going to go ahead and swipe from right to left and duplicate the layer. The bottom one out the two. We're going to go to our colors, double tap at the bottom of the disc to select black. And then you're going to want to go ahead and drag black into both sides of your little white area of cloud. And if you go to your layers, you'll see now it's turned to black. What we're then going to go ahead and do is go to our adjustments. We're going to go to Gaussian blur. We're going to swipe from left to right. And we don't want to add in too big of a shadow here. We are going to go ahead and lower the opacity down so it won't be quite so sort of dramatic and quite contrasty once we change that. And I think to something around about maybe the 8% mark, 8 to 10 will do the trick. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. Then what we'll do is we'll go to our layers. We'll go down to the blue one. We'll come back to it in a second. We'll swipe it from right to left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two. We'll drag black into that shape. Again, you won't see any visual change, but if you go to your layers, you'll see that the bottom one has changed. And again, we'll go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we'll swipe from left to right until we add in the same Gaussian blur, so about 8%. Then we're going to go to our layers again and go down to the final set of clouds and swipe that to the left and duplicate it. And the bottom one out the two, we'll drag black into it again. And we'll go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right again, adding in that nice 8% Gaussian blur. And tap on your adjustments when you're done. Now what we're actually going to do is we're going to move these at the same time so they're all facing the same angle. So we're going to go ahead and go to our layers. We're going to swipe from left to right on all the black layers. So left to right, left to right. You should have all three selected, which means you're going to adjust all of them at the same time. We're going to grab our cursor. We're going to move the shadow up towards the right here, such as this. And then what we're doing, we're letting the user know the lighting is coming from the bottom left up towards the top right. And that is how these shadows are being casted. Now what you can do is, if you want to, maybe make them a little bit bigger. And then that way, when you move them up and across, you'll end up creating a shadow that's big enough just to go edge to edge. So we're still sort of giving that effect that it's off to the top right, but it's nicely connected on either side of the canvas. So that's how your shadows should look. And then you can go ahead and tap on your cursor when you're done. Now less is more with this type of effect. So we're going to go to each layer. So we've got the top one here with the white. You can tap on the N for normal and lower its opacity down. Have a play with it until you're happy with the percentage. I think something between sort of 20 to maximum about sort of 35 looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it to 30. And I'm going to do the same for the other layer. So the other shadow layer, tap on the N, lower it down to 35%. And then the next one down as well. Tap on the N and lower that down to 30%. I think I maybe made the middle one 35, which I did. I'm going to lower that down to 30, just so it's all nice and consistent. And then you've got this really nice shadow effect making its way backwards. What we're then going to do is we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go ahead and on the middle blue layer here, we're going to tap on the layer and we're going to alpha lock it. So we're making all of our adjustments to our clouds now so I can save you some layers later on. So we've alpha locked the layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here. So it is the 5th color on that top row. We're going to go to our brush library. We're going to go to airbrushing and the soft brush. The brush size can be roughly around about sort of 12%. And then just underneath where our shadow is, I'm going to be really light. I'm just going to paint in a bit more of this blue and sort of fade it up towards the edges there of the cloud, just in that area down there. And basically anywhere the shadow shows, just going to sort of circle in a little bit of this darker blue color, what that will do is that will give that shadow a little bit more colour rather than it just being black. So you see a very subtle change there. So if I go ahead now and go back to my layers and we go to the next blue layer down, we're going to tap on that and also alpha lock it. So it's these back clouds. We're going to go to our colours. Now I've not added a colour because I want to show you this particular thing you can do. Is we're going to select this colour here. So it's the 5th colour on the top row. We're going to go to our values. And then you'll see at the top here, we've got some extra sliders. So if you want to sort of use the same colour, but adjust it just a tiny percentage or two, we can go ahead and do that up here. So I can go ahead now and just lower the brightness, which is this one here, and we'll drop it down to maybe say 70%. We can even go ahead and increase the saturation of it if we want to 70%. And we'll end up with a slightly tweaked version. You can pop it in your canvas if you want to, and you can see the difference between the two. So I'll just go ahead and hold down on that colour and delete it. But now we have a slightly darker version. We can go ahead and make sure that the layer is alpha locked, which it is. And we'll do exactly the same, just where the shadows are. We're just going to paint in this slightly darker blue colour to give that shadow a bit more colour. And also diffuse it a little bit. So there we go. So that is our shadows added in there for those clouds. Now at this stage it's totally up to you, but you can go ahead and go to your layers, and if you want to, you could pinch all 6 of the cloud layers onto one layer. I'll let you make that decision based on your iPad and your layer count. We're then going to go ahead and go to our background layer. We're going to go to our colours. We're going to go ahead and grab the first colour in the palette. We're going to go to our selection tool and the rectangle option, and we're going to make sure colour fill is turned on. And we're going to draw a box at the top here until we leave sort of this middle area here with the original colour. Tap on your selection tool when you're done. And then I'm going to go back to my colours, and I'm going to grab this colour here, the 5th colour on the top row. I'm going to go to my selection tool, the rectangle and colour fill still on again, and create another box at the top here. And tap on my selection tool when I'm done. Then we'll go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right, and that'll give us a nice gradient in the background there, giving us a nice little bit of contrast from top to bottom. So I've gone up to 50% there with our Gaussian blur, and we can tap on our adjustments when we're done. We've now got a lot more colour, and it's starting to tie those clouds in a bit more. Let's go to our layers then. I'm going to go ahead and group all of my clouds together. So if you've got an iPad that has a certain amount of layers that you can do this with, you can want to group them together, and we can rename them, and we can call them clouds. And you can then nicely collapse the group down, keeping things nice and tidy, or you can merge it onto one layer depending on your iPad. Next, what we're going to do is create our hot air balloon before we add in the clouds around it. So you always want to add your subject then in the space it's meant to be, and then add the things around it, just so that you don't sort of make things too tight or too squeezed in basically. So we're going to go to our layers and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colours. We're going to grab this colour here. It's the first of all the pink colours, so it's the 6th colour on the top row. We're going to go ahead and go to our brush again, and we're going to go to our new brush that we made. So in calligraphy, we've got this monoline that we made. And we want to create 2 circles really. So I'm going to make my brush size, and I'm going to make it a bit bigger again. I'm going to go up to about 48% and tap in the middle of the screen. That'll be the main height and the width of our hot air balloon there. Then we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go ahead and swipe that circle to the left and duplicate it. We're going to go ahead and select both of the circles first of all by swiping on the extra one from left to right. We're going to go to our cursor. We're going to make sure snapping is turned on here in the bottom, which means that we can then pop it in the center when we hit that orange line to let us know we are smack bang in the center of our canvas. Tap on your cursor when you're done. Then go to either one of these extra circles. Grab your cursor. We're going to scale this down with the uniform option, and we're going to put it again on that center line, and we're going to pretty much just sort of match up to the bottom of it. So that's kind of where we want to leave that for the minute. This is going to be the bottom of our balloon, and it's going to run round either side. Then go to your cursor when you're done. Now for this, I'm going to go ahead and then go to my actions. I'm going to go to canvas. I'm going to edit the drawing guide. So by turning it on and then editing it, I'm going to go to symmetry, and I'm going to make sure the option now is set to vertical. Basically, I only want to do the work once so that we use the symmetry tool to save us a bit of time. So we're going to hit done. We're then going to go to our brush library and go to the monoline brush that we would normally have. And we're going to make sure the layer is set to assisted, so it's got this little extra tag underneath. And what we're going to do is we're going to simply just sort of join up one side. So my brush size is currently set to about 12%. I'm going to sort of draw in a line from the edge of one circle at the top, make sure it runs into the one at the bottom nice and smooth. And then once you've done that, we can then go to our layers and pinch the two sort of pink coloured layers together. And we can drag the colour into the gap like so. And that will be your hot air balloon. What we're then going to go ahead and do is go to our layers again. We're going to create another new layer. We're going to go ahead and go back to our brush and we're going to change it to the monoline that we had before that we just created. And we're going to make our brush size around about 12%. We're going to go ahead and tap underneath. We're going to grab our cursor and make sure we move it onto that center line. So we get that orange line there to let you know you're nice and central. And then what we're going to do is just tap on our cursor. We're going to go to the layer. We're going to tap on it and make sure it's using the drawing assist. We're going to go to our eraser. We're going to tap on the eraser and go to calligraphy and the monoline brush that we would normally have. Make the brush size maybe around about sort of 16%. And we're going to create an arc that just runs across it. So draw an arc and hold your pen down until you get something like this. And then we're going to go ahead and erase that top part. And then we'll just simply just round off the corners a little bit. So I'll make my brush size a bit smaller for this one, maybe around about 3%, and just create a nice, much more rounded shape on there, keeping things nice and round like the rest of the design, and pinch out when you're done. And that's going to be your basket. But what we'll then do is we'll go to our cursor, we'll use the freeform option, and we'll just make that a little bit taller until it's a much nicer sort of basket shape. It's a bit deeper. And there you go, you've got your basket underneath your hot air balloon. Next, what we're going to do is add in some joining rope lines. So we're going to go to our layers, we're going to create a new layer. We're going to drag it underneath the main hot air balloon body shape. While we're at this stage, we're going to swipe from left to right on the other two as well and group them together. So this is all in our balloon layer. And then on this empty layer we made, we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab white, which is the third color on that top row. We're going to make sure our brush is back to the monoline brush. We'll make it nice and small, maybe around about, let's see what 3% looks like. That looks pretty good to me. So 3% on the brush size, and we'll go back to our layer. We'll tap on it and use the drawing assist. So that way everything is nice and symmetrical, and we can draw in one line here from that edge to the corner. And then we'll draw in another one here and just join that inwards slightly like so. There you go, you've got all the basic shapes we now need for our hot air balloon. So what we're now going to do is create the cool 3D effect on the hot air balloon itself. So we're going to go to our layers, we're going to go to the hot air balloon layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top one out of the two, grab your colors. We're going to grab the next pink color along, so it's the 7th color on that top, and drag that color into our hot air balloon. You'll see it change color. Then we're going to go to our cursor, again using freeform. We're just going to make it a bit narrower and then move it into the center again on that center line, hitting the orange line to let us know we're nice and central. So I'm going to make it a bit smaller again and just pop it on that center line, leaving a nice gap on either side to play with. If anything, I can make it a little bit smaller. And you also want to make sure that we don't move it any higher or lower. Then we'll go to our layers again and we'll swipe that layer to the left and duplicate it. We'll go to our colors again. We'll go ahead and grab this color on the far right first of all, so the very far right color of the pinks, and drag it into the center. And again, go to your cursor, using freeform, just make it a little bit narrower again. The only thing you need to try and bear in mind now is when you make it a little bit narrower, the gap between the edge and this one wants to be pretty consistent. You don't want to make it sort of too big on one edge. So the gap here is the same as this gap here. And then tap on my cursor when I'm done. So zoom out just to take a look and make sure you're happy with it. We can always adjust it afterwards. We're going to go to our layer. We're going to swipe that last layer to the left and duplicate it again. We're going to go to our colors and grab this light pink just beside it. So it's the second color from the right, and drag that into our hot air balloon. Except on this occasion, we're just going to go to our selection tool. We're going to make sure we turn off color fill. That's very important. We're going to use rectangle, and we're going to go ahead and pop our pen directly on that center line, selecting the right hand side. Then go to the layer, tap on it and use the option of clear. And then what you'll have done there is you'll have chopped that front facing one in half, and now we've got two sides. Next, what we're going to do is add some shadows, just like we did with the clouds, but on the hot air balloon. So we're going to go to our layers. We want to go ahead and grab our basket at the top here and just drag it down so it's just in front of our rope ties. And then we'll pinch those two together. We'll swipe that one to the left and duplicate it. And the bottom one out the two, tap on it and alpha lock it. Go to your colors, go to the disc and double tap at the bottom of the disc to select black. We'll then go back to our layer, tap on it and fill it with black. And tap on the layer and turn off the alpha lock. We're going to go to our adjustments and we're going to go to Gaussian blur. Now, with this being a slightly smaller space, we may want to make this a little bit less. But last time we went up to 8%. And I think I'll just drop it to 7, just ever so slightly, just to keep some definition with those ropes in there as well. Then we're going to go ahead and go to our layer. We're going to go ahead and change the value from N and lower the opacity down. And I'm going to drop this down to 55%. So it's a little bit more than the back. Then grab my cursor and again move it up towards that top right sort of angle. So that's where all of our lighting is coming from. So if we tap on our cursor and zoom out, that's got a nice shadow in beside it and it matches up to the lighting of everything else. And then before we progress onto the rest of it, we're going to go to the layer. We're going to go to the basket itself and create a new layer above it and tap on it and clip it to the basket. We're going to go ahead and change the layer blend mode from normal to overlay. We're going to go to our colors, double tap in the top left to select white. Go to your brush library and airbrushing and the soft brush. And we'll make the brush size nice and small, maybe around about 4%, if not slightly smaller than that, about maybe 3 or 2. And this bottom left edge, just going to add in a really nice bright highlight of lighting. And this will really pull off that lighting effect because that's getting a nice bit of that light and actually reflecting it a little bit. So that's that all done with. We can now go to our layers. If you want to, you can pinch all 3 of those onto one layer and save yourself some layers. The next layer is the big hot air balloon itself. Swipe that to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the 2. We're going to go to our colors, double tap at the bottom of the disc to select black and drag black into the body of it. You won't see any visual change, but if you go to your layer, it's changed to black. We can go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we can swipe from left to right until again we add in that 8% Gaussian blur. We're going to go ahead and grab our cursor. We'll move it up towards that top right until you get a nice bit of distance between the actual hot air balloon and the shadow, something like this. And then go to the layer, tap on the N value and lower the opacity down. And I'm going to drop this all the way down to something about 20%, so it matches up to the clouds a bit more. If anything, maybe we'll make it a bit bigger, about 28. That way we'll end up with a really nice shadow off of our hot air balloon as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on with the rest of the shadows before we add in those highlights. So we're going to go ahead now and duplicate the one above it. So it's the slightly inward version of the main body. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the 2, tap on it, clip it down a layer so it's clipped to the main body and drag black into that shape. So again, if I go to my layers, this one here, the slightly inward one, has now got a black one underneath it. I'm going to change the opacity straight away from maximum all the way down to about sort of 28%. Go to my Gaussian blur, so adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right till we add in that 8% Gaussian blur. Then grab my cursor and move the shadow up towards that top right edge. So I'm trying to keep this shadow contained within the body and it not spread too far. So we've got that shadow in there. I can zoom out a little bit. And if anything, on this layer, I'm going to make it a bit bigger in terms of the opacity. So I'm going to bring it up to 40%. So this inner shadow here has got a really nice bit of depth to it. So we're going to go ahead and kind of repeat those same steps. So we're going to go ahead and go up a layer to this inner pink shape. So it's this shape here. We're going to swipe back to the left and duplicate it. We're going to tap on the bottom one out the 2. Tap on it and clip it down to the next pink shape underneath. Drag black right into the center here. Go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur. Swipe from left to right until you add in that 8% Gaussian blur. Go straight to your layer. Tap on the N. Lower the opacity down to 40%. Then grab your cursor and move it up towards that top right edge again. So your shadow will just nicely fall off from that left side now all over to the right. And if you move it ever so slightly to the left, you might end up with a tiny bit of sort of shadow up here, which will look really nice. But your shadow now sits off on that right side. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is add in those nice lighting effects. So we'll go to our layers. We're going to go right to the top up here, which is that slightly left panel at the front. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer above it and tap on it and clipping mask it down and change the layer effect from normal to overlay. We'll go to our colors. We'll double tap in the top left to select white, and we'll go to our brush again, making sure it's still the soft airbrush. And what we're going to do is we're just going to brighten up the bottom edge here and up the side a little bit. So we're going to go around there and just sort of push our highlight up that edge and then blend it out a few times with a few extra strokes. So you should end up with this nice sort of bright edge that looks like it's pointing down towards the light source. Then we'll go to our layers. You can pinch those two layers together now if you're done, so you can pinch them together. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go down, and in our layers you've got this shadow here, which is clipped to that layer. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer above it and tap on it and clipping mask it. And change the layer effect from normal to overlay again. And now we're adding a shadow to this inner bit of the balloon in the same fashion. So you're just going to come down that edge. So we're going to go ahead and go round that edge and just get slightly wider towards the base. So it's facing our light source and just catching a bit of that light. Then go to your layers. Go down to the next shadow that's clipped. Create a new layer. Tap on it and clipping mask it. And change the layer effect from normal to, again, overlay. And then we're going to go ahead and again just brighten up that edge. So go down it, and then as you get slightly further down, just make it a little bit wider. You may want to do it in a couple of strokes. You don't have to do it perfectly in one go. Just a couple of strokes on that edge, and that lighting really does make it look very 3D. It looks very cool. Now, if you are worrying about your layer count, we grouped it all together on purpose. You can either collapse it down, tap on the group now and flatten it into one layer, and then that way you can save on your layer count. Because the only thing we now need to add in is some background clouds. So we're going to go ahead and go down to the layer for our gradient background, create a new layer. We're going to go to our brush, and we're going to go back to our new brush that we made, so into calligraphy and that monoline brush. Make the brush size maybe around about sort of 8% to start with, and we're just going to create some little clouds. So just going to tap and then tap a few times beside it, and then maybe make the brush size a bit smaller again, maybe 5% this time. So I'm creating like a blob of a cloud like this, but don't get too precious over them, because then what we're going to do is grab our rectangle of our selection tool, making sure again color fill is turned off, and we are going to slice straight through the middle, cut the bottom. So we're going to go to our layer, tap on it and use the option of clear, and you'll end up with this really cool little cloud look, almost like Andy's bedroom sort of clouds. And then just repeat that. We're going to go ahead and just increase our brush size maybe up to even something a bit bigger, maybe 10%. And then just create some big fluffy clouds, maybe reduce the brush size down to 8%. And you can make them all very different from one another. You can even make one that's got like a really big blob at the top there. But again, go to your selection tool and cut straight through the bottom. Go to your layer, tap on it and use the option of clear, and it will cut that selection straight out of it, and you can end up with some clouds like this. So just repeat that across the whole of your background. So I'm just going to go ahead now and make a lot of clouds, and I'm going to make this one sort of tail off to the right a little bit. I might even just leave it like that. I'm going to just fill in the gap one more time, maybe over here, with one that just runs off to the edge of the screen, just like so. Because what you can do is then go to your selection tool and select this area, then go to the layer, tap on it and use the option of clear, and it will cut both of them at the same time. So you can save a little bit of time that way. So that's looking nice and balanced. And if one gets ever so slightly too close, you can even grab your selection tool, select one of them, and then just grab your cursor and just move it out of the way, so you can give your main subject a bit of breathing space. Then we'll go over to the other side and we'll repeat the process. We want 3 on either side now, just to keep things nice and balanced. So I'm just going to create another couple of blobs across the screen there. And I'll do the same down here, 6% this time for a slightly smaller one with maybe a big blob off the side of it. Then grab my selection tool. I'm going to cut straight through that and not get too precious over it at all. Cut straight through it. Then go back to the layer, tap on it and use the option of clear. And you'll end up with some nice variety of clouds in your sky. And again, you may want to move some. So maybe, for example, if I grab my selection tool, I can maybe move this one and grab my cursor, just move it down so it's a bit more balanced. Keep saying the word balance, but it's always something you should be looking for, which is balance, of course. And then that one up there, I can maybe grab my selection tool, cursor, and move it down just a smidge. And then on this layer, we're just going to go ahead and go to our layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, tap on it and invert it, which will change it from white to black or color to color if it wasn't black or white. Then go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, swipe from left to right until you add in that 8% Gaussian blur. Go to the layer, let's tap on it and lower its opacity down to that 30% mark. And then grab your cursor and move it up towards that top right edge, giving this a nice little bit of shadow as well. So a little something like that. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and go up to our actions. We can turn off our drawing guide. We can go ahead and pinch with 2 fingers, go full screen with 4, and we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this hot air balloon design. A couple of tweaks that I would probably make to my own is I would go to my layers, and even if you collapse your layers down, it's fine. I would probably start to move my clouds down a little bit, maybe give a bit more breathing space to our hot air balloon, just like so. Bring them down slightly off screen is fine, just chop them away at the bottom. Again, giving that a little bit more breathing space. And then I would probably grab my hot air balloon group and also move that down as well, just into that gap, just a little bit more, just so that it's, again, just trying to work out a balanced sort of look to the whole design. And to me, that looks bang on. So I'm going to go ahead again, pinch with 2 fingers, go full screen with 4, and we end up with today's finished design. Now, if you want to share your finished designs with me, please come and share them with me over on Instagram. You can tag me in your designs. You can come and join my Facebook group. You can tag me in your designs on TikTok. Anywhere I am, please be sure to share your designs with me. I love seeing your finished creations. As always, a massive shout out to all of my supporters over on Patreon. If you want to get your name featured in videos, sneak peeks of upcoming designs, early access to tutorials, and much, much more, hit the link in the description down below. And if you liked this particular video, you'll probably like this one on the screen. Now, of course, as always, today's equipment list is the Sketchboard Pro. You can always use code JOELCREATE to get yourself a nice 10% off. I'm using the Doudrop glove and the pen mat screen cover by Pen Tips. There's also a discount code for Pen Tips in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.